Regardless of the method that you're actually using to cook your food, there's three main goals that you might be trying to achieve. I'm going to talk about each one of the three goals and explain how they relate to sous vide. The three goals are to heat your food through, to make your food safe to eat, and to tenderize your food. Very rarely will you be trying to achieve all three goals, but it's important to know which one is most important to you during any given cook. The main principles that are at play here is that the longer you cook food, the more tender it gets. And as long as the food is out of the danger zone, the longer you cook it, the safer it gets to eat, up to a certain point when it's already going to be pasteurized. With sous vide food, when you're just trying to heat it through, all that matters is the thickness of the food. I provide some charts below and some links to other charts that help you determine exactly how long you need to heat it through. A 1-inch thick piece of steak will always take the same amount of time to cook, regardless of whether it's a smaller strip steak or a larger flank steak. As long as it's an inch thick, it takes the same amount of time. The charts below will work for any type of tender, already safe food. Normally, steaks and other things you would throw on the grill just to cook through to eat. Some things need to be cooked until they're safe to eat. These are things like chicken breasts, lower quality pork chops, ground meat, things that might have pathogens on the inside that you're trying to kill off during the cooking process. The process of cooking them until they're safe is called pasteurization, and a lot of these foods you want to cook until they're pasteurized. I have some charts linked up below that will again show you how long you need to cook food in order to make sure it's safe and completely pasteurized. I always pasteurize chicken, I usually pasteurize pork, and I always pasteurize ground meat, unless it's something that I've ground myself. But with sous vide, pasteurization is easy, so it usually doesn't hurt to do it. So I even pasteurize some different steaks when I'm cooking them, and I always pasteurize foods if I'm serving them to someone with a weaker immune system, such as children, older people, or women that are pregnant. It doesn't hurt to cook it a little bit longer, pasteurize it, and make it safe for them as possible. The third type of foods are foods that not only need to be heated through, but they need to be tenderized. These are tougher cuts, like a chuck roast or short ribs, pork shoulder, things that if you just throw them on the grill, they're going to be tough and chewy, and it's not going to be an enjoyable experience eating them. With sous vide, we can hold them at a lower temperature, cook them for a long period of time, and it's going to tenderize them. So you can have short ribs that taste like steak instead of having to make a braise out of them. You can make pork shoulder that tastes like pork chops instead of being shredded like pulled pork. You have a lot of options, and the longer you cook it, the more tender it's going to get. Some foods you don't want to cook for a long time, like a filet mignon or a chicken breast, or it's going to become too tender, and it's not going to have the bite that we like when we're eating food like that. Some foods don't need to be tenderized, but they benefit from it. Something like a sirloin steak can just be heated through, and you're going to eat it, and it's going to be really good. But if you let it go a little bit longer, for 5 or 10 hours, it's going to start to tenderize even more, and it's going to taste like a higher quality cut of meat. You get a lot of benefit out of that for almost no extra effort. Below the video, I have links to my comprehensive time and temperature charts. It'll let you know how long and at what temperature you can cook a lot of various cuts at, so it'll help you make those decisions without having to guess at it. They're tried and true times that I and thousands of other people have tested over the years and have found to be really good at starting points for finding your own preferences. Because sous vide is a slow process, one of the big benefits is that you have a lot of wiggle room. So while I provide different times, it might be an actual range from 2 to 4 hours. And that's because within that time range, it's always going to taste great. Eventually the food's going to tenderize too much and it's not going to be tasty, but we're talking the span of hours, not minutes. So you can cook a strip steak for 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours, and it's still going to taste amazing. Having that flexibility helps remove a lot of the stress of trying to meal plan around people that have really busy days. To highlight the 3 different goals of heating your food, namely to heat it through, to make it safe to eat, or to tenderize it. I want to give you an example that will help highlight the differences between them and show you when you might want to use one goal over the other. For this example, we're going to take 3 different cuts of meat. We're going to take a 1-inch thick filet mignon, a 1-inch thick chicken breast, and a 1-inch thick piece of chuck steak. All 3 are 1 inch thick and they heat at relatively the same times. So I'm going to go through a few different scenarios and explain where each cut would be at different times. We're going to cook them all at 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to cook them for the same amount of time. And I'm going to explain to you what's happening with each one of the cuts as we go through the different times. That will give you a good idea of what is happening during the sous vide process. The first benchmark is that after an hour and 15 minutes, all three are going to be heated through. They're going to be completely warm and they're going to taste good. But the filet mignon is going to be cooked perfectly. It's going to be exactly what you want in a filet mignon. Once you sear it, it's going to be very tender, very moist, and it's going to be an amazing piece of meat. Chicken breast, on the other hand, might taste good, but it's not going to be safe to eat. You're not going to have killed the pathogens on it, and you could get sick from eating it, just like if you were eating it raw. Finally, the chuck steak is going to be heated through. It's going to be safe to eat, because beef has different pasteurization needs than chicken does, which I have a link for below. But you're not going to want to eat it. It's going to be chewy, it's going to be tough, and it's going to be almost inedible. It's going to be so hard because it's not broken down any. And that's why you rarely see chuck steaks in grocery stores, and no one's grilling a chuck steak, because it's so tough that it's not something you want to eat without it being tenderized. That's why you make pot roast out of it. The next benchmark is at 2.5 hours. At this point, the filet is still perfectly cooked, and it's actually pasteurized now. So if it had been blade tenderized, or if you're serving it to someone that was pregnant and you wanted to make sure it was 100% safe, it is now at that level. The extra hour it's been cooking hasn't hurt it at all, and it's going to be slightly more tender than it was an hour ago. The chicken, on the other hand, is now safe to eat. That extra hour has killed everything that's inside of the chicken that could make you sick. It's now perfectly safe, and it's going to be really flavorful, moist, and tender. And it's perfectly cooked chicken breast at this point. The chuck steak is still really tough. It's only been 2.5 hours, and that's not enough time to break down the chuck steak. So you're still going to run into trouble if you're trying to eat it. We've been going through small jumps in time here. But if we kept doing that, it would take us a while to get to the next benchmark, which is at 48 hours. At 48 hours, the filet mignon is going to taste like mush, and so is the chicken breast. The structure of the meat is going to have broken down so much that it's going to have none of the bite we like with properly cooked meat. The chuck steak, on the other hand, is going to be perfectly cooked. It's going to have tenderized enough that it's going to have the texture almost of a ribeye. It's amazing how it transforms over this long cooking time. It's not going to be chewy, it's not going to be hard to eat, it's going to be wonderful and be one of the best cuts that you've had. I like chuck steaks cooked for between 24 to 48 hours. That's enough time to really tenderize it and turn it into an amazing cut of meat. So now you've seen how 3 different types of meat have transformed over the cooking time. You'll be able to figure out now what you're actually trying to accomplish when you're heating it through. Well, you just need to heat the meat so it's tasty and warm, whether you're trying to make it safe to eat by pasteurizing it, and whether you're trying to cook it for a long period of time to tenderize it. And once you know what you're trying to accomplish, it becomes much, much easier to figure out how long you actually need to cook it.